When you think of toxic and family, it doesn't usually go together because you associate your family as someone or a place where it's your home, it's your safety, it's your comfort. And obviously, something that's toxic is harmful to you and it could damage you, and overall, it's not good for you. But people that have experienced extended family members' involvement in their lives and dealt with the emotional and physical pain that they've been through and the suffering, then they will full well understand what it means to have a toxic family member. Or just overall involvement from your extended family members or members of your community. If you haven't been to my page before, welcome. I'm Hamasa, and on this page I look at personal development, mental and emotional well-being, and day-to-day issues. So please subscribe to my channel, keep up to date with my content, and if you're coming back, then welcome back. Now, in our cultures, people who are of ethnic minorities, it's very common not only for your immediate family members to have a strong opinion and say in your lifestyle choices, career choices, relationship choices, but even the extended family and at most times the community that your family is ethnically from feel the right or feel that they can and do usually share their opinions and really impose that on you and question you about your lifestyle choices. So this is something that a lot of us have had to deal with, including myself. This is something that we're constantly faced with throughout our childhood up until adulthood and even into our marriages. And usually when it's immediate family, it's kind of resolved and, they're doing it to look out for you. But when it comes to extended family, the intention isn't always what's best for you. And usually that comes down to, I had a conversation about this with my mom and I said, what's your opinion on it? And she, as we were talking and we discussed things, most times when you're younger and the extended family members feel the need to say something about you or to you, it's usually an indirect, snidey comment to one of your parents. So it's not usually directed at you, it's not personal towards you, it's just like trying to make a comment on your parents' parenting choices. And it's like, you failed here, this is why your child's doing this. So that's why when you're younger and you start standing up for yourself or speaking back, it's deemed as disrespectful and going against the culture, so therefore you should really keep quiet and not say anything back. And to an extent it makes sense because, like I said, it's not usually directed at you, it's usually directed at one of your parents. So really it should come down to your parents to put some boundaries down and set the tone and let family members know that they're crossing the line and it's not their place to really dictate how you should live your life because you're not their child. Fair, they're your family and they may have an opinion, but it doesn't mean that they should really enforce that on you or that they should be mean or rude to you about your choices, which subject you chose at university or something. So the important thing here is to understand and speak to your parents and let them know that this is happening and it's not right, and that communication is key in all situations when it comes to family, because you can't throw them away. You can't get rid of them. You have to manage and deal. And so that comes from good communication. So communicating that to your parents and letting them take control and set the boundaries and let people know that this is not their place to say anything is what will help the situation. But it's different when you're an adult and you have your own family or you've moved out and your family still has a lot to say. So when you're an adult, you've grown up, you have your own life, you have your own job, and there are toxic family members that are still getting involved in your life, this is when you could take the reins and do something about it. And it doesn't mean that you have to be disrespectful. It's about being firm, but very kind with it. But set some healthy boundaries and let them know that this is not okay anymore, especially that you have your own life and you've grown up. The first thing to do is to keep meeting them for brief times. Like I said, you can't get rid of your family. They're going to be there. You're going to see them. So make sure that when it comes to interactions, you're keeping it short but sweet. You don't expose yourself to that sort of toxicity or the negative comments, and yet still you're there and you're polite. So you keep it very civil. You keep the conversation very blasé, very sort of just, hi, how are you? And keep it to small talk. There's no need to get into anything. Keep it brief, keep it short, and then remove yourself from the situation. Because this is extended family or the wider community, they don't need to be involved in your life, and nor do you owe them time. As long as you've showed face at, like, let's say birthdays, weddings, funerals, then you're being respectful, but you're not giving them the importance to have something to say to you. The next thing that I'd say is be direct. Sometimes you could give hints or kind of just pull back, and they would still not pick up on the subtle hints. So setting boundaries and letting someone know, I really don't like that. I'd wish if you didn't say it. Again, in a polite way, but you speak up and you set your boundaries. Then you've done your part. Now you've told them how you feel. Most times, if they're being respectful or they don't actually want to hurt you, then they take that into consideration and kind of back off. But if it continues, then again, you know that your boundary is being broken, and there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. It's a form of self-care, and that you need to then not entertain them anymore and completely don't even give them time because you've asked them nicely and it's just fallen on deaf ears. But what happens when you set boundaries is that fear sets in. First, you contemplate their reaction. What happens when I do say this to them? And it becomes very anxious environment for you because you keep overthinking things and you're too scared to say it. And the second thing can happen is that when you have said it, for you to maintain this boundary and stick to your guns. But that's all just anxiety playing up, and it's something that you haven't done before, and change is always scary. But if you don't put a stop to this and make a change, then no one else will, because these are your boundaries. You have to set them and you have to maintain them. And in the grand scheme of things, as much as this might be fearful or scary for you, it's still beneficial and it still enables your full potential and growth without some toxicity from people that you're not really wanting to entertain. So it's important for you to set these boundaries, because in the long run, you're growing older, you're choosing your career paths and your partner and your kids' upbringing, then all of those things will be affected if you don't set healthy boundaries when and if you're ready to do them. So don't let fear stop you. Make sure that when you're ready to speak up for yourself, you do it and then you stick with it. And when you do, most times, those family members end up giving you respect because they see growth in you and they also understand. It's like a bully. So when you stand up to a bully, that's when they back off. But if you let them continue that behavior, they do it. So don't enable them to think that it's okay to disrespect you. Another big issue with toxic family members is that they're master manipulators. Emotional manipulation and blackmail is a big part of family toxicity. Because you care about the person and you care about how they feel, they use that against you. These family members often use charm and charisma to get you involved in their ways and do exactly as they want you to do. And they make you feel guilty for it if you don't. So it's very important to break this manipulation cycle and always do what's best for you and what feels right for you. And not feel guilty about not doing their way, because remember, when someone's this toxic and always involved, regardless of what you do for them, is never going to be enough anyway. So you might as well do what's right for you instead of letting them manipulate you into their way of doing things. When it comes to them questioning you or issues and problems, don't give them explanations. People like that love drama. Sorry. And the more you give people explanation, the more it's something for them to use for drama. They love the gossip. So you withholding this information, you not giving them explanation for things, you don't owe that to them. If you can't come somewhere because you have work, you just tell them, I have work, I can't make it, sorry, have a nice time. You don't need to say, oh, and then I'm going here, my work's from this time to this time, I feel tired. Keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it brief. The less they know, the less drama they can create out of it. Which brings me to my next point, which is withholding information. Also, toxic family members, what they tend to do is whatever information they have on you, they will use as ammunition. And they will use it against you, and they will talk behind your back, and they will spread those things. So whatever personal information and things that you tell them can then come back and bite you in the bum, because these people have probably spoken about it to people you may not want them to know. So remember, they don't need to know all the information. You don't need to tell them anything that you don't want to share, especially when it comes to your personal problems and personal issues, because later that information could come back and backfire, because that's what they like to do. They like using ammunition. So remember, the less you explain and the less they know, the less information they have, the less they have to talk about you. Toxic people have a tendency of creating crazy drama and crisis for themselves because they're always in the midst of it, so they seem to attract that. That's why whenever that happens and they start victimizing themselves, you have to really put your foot down and set a boundary and not run to their aid every time. It's very different when something's happened to them or they're going through something. Fine, justifiable. As a family member, you could be supportive. But if it's just drama that they're causing and getting involved in other people's business, it's just gossip, it's just they're trying to, you've now spoken up or you've set a boundary and this person doesn't like it, so they're trying to flip the argument, make themselves a victim and just cry out for help, for attention and affection and validation, then this is when you don't owe them your time. You don't owe them that priority. You don't need to be there for their every crisis, because most times it's self-inflicted and you just don't want to be associated with that kind of drama. You don't want to be dragged into that toxicity. You don't want to be dragged into other people's situations. So you don't need to be there for them at every point. And most times that'll probably feel quite bad for you, because that's not necessarily your normal state. You're a kind person and that's not what you want to do to people that you care about. But remember, you are not dealing with a normal family member. You are dealing with someone who's quite toxic. And therefore you have to go out of your way and do things differently, because this person is different. So there's no guilt. You need to do what you need to do for you. And if it gets incredibly overwhelming for you, remember, you are allowed to take a time out from this family member and not really pick up your phone when they call. Don't go out of your way for you to call them. Just keep it very, very distant, very, very occasional. And that way it'll reinforce your boundaries to them, and they'll also understand which position in your life they hold a place in. And they'll know, okay, they're not giving me the time. I can't really say much to this. So that's a good way, by taking a time out from this toxic family member, to let them know where they are in your life and how much importance you're putting on them. And lastly, prioritize self-care. By practicing self-care, prioritizing your wants and needs, looking within, working on yourself, keeping yourself happy, making sure that you cut out negativity, toxicity, set healthy boundaries, you are then giving yourself time to figure out your likes and dislikes, figure out your boundaries, really get to know yourself, and also not feel so fearful and scared, because you are now knowing what makes you truly happy. You understand what you want from your life. You understand where you want to be. So remember, when these family members try and manipulate you into marrying someone that you don't necessarily want to, or taking a job that you don't necessarily want to them, it's probably just the wedding party that they want to have fun in. These same people will not be there when shit hits the fan. Pardon my language. Because when you're dealing with a bad relationship or a bad job and a toxic boss, this family member is not going to be there supporting you through it. They just probably wanted to come and attend the wedding party, or just to say, oh yeah, I told you so, see, you've got a job because of me. But in reality, when you do that and you kind of listen to people and you go against what's authentic to you, you always end up being resentful and unhappy with it. So don't let these toxic family members or the wider community dictate how you should live your life if it go against what you truly believe in your heart of hearts. You have got to, like I said, if you prioritize self-care, then you're a lot more in a position to enforce these boundaries and stick to your guns, because you are now prioritizing yourself and you're taking care of yourself first and foremost. I hope you guys found this video helpful. For people like myself, and I'm sure majority of my followers who are in similar positions as me, it is very difficult for us to juggle our culture and what our parents believe is the right way, and the society that we live in today, which is very different to what they've been brought up in. So juggling this and getting the balance right, and yet living an authentic life and living a happy, fulfilled life that feels right for us, is not easy. And we will encounter people and situations where we just won't see eye to eye, and so they feel like they have a right or a say in our lives and how we should live it. And unfortunately, out of love and respect, most times we do give in, but then we end up living in a lot of resent. And it's really time for us to start standing up for ourselves and to start really figuring out what feels right for us and going against the grain kind of thing, and not necessarily allowing generational boundaries and generational dated, societal pressures dictate how and what is good for us today. By no means does that mean that you go and disrespect your family members or your culture. It just means that you still stay authentic and true to yourself within the respect and within a way of managing it and dealing with it without having to harm or upset anyone. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. I hope that these tips come in handy when you are faced with a toxic family member. And please do share your experiences if you end up using any of these. I would love to know if it has helped you and ways that you manage dealing with toxic family members or your community. Thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe to my channel, like and comment on this video, and I will see you guys here again next week. Mwah.